All right, here we go. Salute to Knicks Nation on this Friday afternoon. We made it, the end of the week. KFTV Live, the lunchtime grind edition. CB the franchise in the building. Special guest covers the New York Knicks for the New York Post. Jared Schwartz joins us live from Indianapolis. 15 games left to go, and the Knicks are facing, hopefully, a lighter schedule. It was supposed to be that way on Wednesday until they found themselves in a dogfight against a team trying to tank in the Utah Jazz. So hopefully they fare a little bit better against the Indiana Pacers. But either way, we'll chop it up with Jared on the state of the team. Does the starting lineup need a fix? A lot of you guys have been debating this ad nauseum all week, but we'll get Jared's thoughts on that. Plus, will Jordan Clarkson make his way back into the rotation? That and a lot more. Fan mailbag show later on as well. So like I said, man, lock in, like, share, subscribe. We in here. Happy Friday to the squad. All right, Jared, welcome to the show, man. First time on KFTV, man. Welcome to the show, man.
How are you, CP? A pleasure to be on this show for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. How's it going in India? I saw you got to a famous steakhouse. Or how was last night, man?
Yeah, it's windy. It's in the 40s. Gonna get up to the 50s. I tried the famous St. Elmo Steakhouse last night.
Okay.
It's the Indianapolis staple. I know all the football guys, when they're here for the combine, always make it a point to go there. I know, team executives, coaches, players, they always go there. Like, plenty of trades have gone down there. Good ambiance, good atmosphere.
Not good steaks? You didn't get to the steaks yet, man.
Fine steak. Fine steak. Doesn't crack. I think we're spoiled, in New York. I live in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I think we're a little spoiled for choice. Doesn't crack my top five. Now, to be fair, I'm not a shrimp guy.
Okay.
And they're famous for their shrimp cocktail. And, I didn't get that because I'm not a big shrimp guy.
Yes.
Maybe not a fully fair review.
Yeah.
But just in terms of the steak, a good steak. But
a good steak. Not a Luger's steak. Not a Luger's. Not a Luger. Okay. All right. That's fair enough. Now, the squad is last game of the road trip. No shoot-around tonight. You said they canceled shoot-around.
Yeah. No shoot-around today. Yeah, I guess the last game of the road trip, no shoot-around. We did just learn, actually, just a couple of minutes ago, though, that Karl Anthony Towns, Josh Hart, and Jeremy Sohan were all downgraded from questionable to doubtful, actually.
Doubtful. Okay.
So like
what are they dealing with? What are the injuries we're looking at right now?
I know both Cat and Josh Hart are knee injuries. It was listed as knee soreness. So it doesn't seem like anything too serious, but it does seem like they'll both be out tonight.
And then what about Sohan? Anything on him?
I'm not actually sure. Actually, I just got the update. I didn't look at the injury report in full, but it doesn't seem like anything too serious. It was doubt. It's not out, so it's doesn't seem like anything too serious.
Yeah, with the Cat thing, it looked like he was holding his knee after during the Clippers game. A lot of people are like, he's just embarrassed because he missed a dunk, but he had been dealing with the patella tendonitis or tendinopathy last year in that right knee. So I was wondering if that was barking on him again this year. I'm not sure if it's the same one, but Hart and Towns and Sohan downgraded to doubtful. Meanwhile, the tanking Pacers were load managing last night against the Phoenix Suns to get ready to stick it to the Knicks tonight. So typical Knick fashion, they get everybody's best.
It's the reverse of last time. Last time the Knicks played the Pacers first, and then the Pacers played the Nets, and they rested everybody against. They played everybody against the Knicks, and then rested everybody against the Nets. This time around, it's rest everybody last night, have everybody ready for today against the Knicks. So look, the Pacers may be tanking, they may be playing for ping pong balls, they might be looking at the draft, but you can bet that this group gets up for a game against the Knicks. And, it wasn't even that last game. We saw right after they won the NBA Cup, and the Knicks were resting some guys in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
I think that game came down to, 2 points right at the end. The Knicks had to save it right at the end. So, we were joking last game that they could throw out any five. They put on a Pacers uniform, they're going to play the Knicks close. It just seems like that's going to happen. And maybe tonight is different, but this Pacers team, no matter what their record is, where they are in the standings, what their future schedule is, it seems like they get up for this Knicks game. And it seems like, the whole idea of a team having a team's number, like this Pacers team just finds a way to play their best basketball against the Knicks.
Yeah, so far as they are in the last game of this road trip, 2-2 so far. What do you gather from just being in that locker room, being around those guys? What do you gather is the psyche of this team? The two letdown games against the Lakers and the Clippers, a barn burner against the Jazz. What do you think these guys are? What's your opinion on where they are mentally right now?
Well, I think this road trip has really been an encapsulation of kind of who these Knicks have been. Their highs are really high and their lows are pretty low. They blow out the Nuggets, a good Nuggets team who's pretty high in the standings in the West. They obviously have an MVP candidate in Nikola Jokic. And they blow out the Nuggets and they're playing their backups, for pretty much the whole fourth quarter. And it's like, okay, here are those real Knicks, these Knicks that have been on a tear, on a surge since the All-Star break. Cat's playing great. Brunson's a distributor. Maybe he's not shooting well, but he's distributing. Now the Knicks are surging into the postseason. And then two games in LA, the warm weather, the beach, and it's two letdown games. Two games, I think 19 and 20 turnovers.
Yes.
Mike Brown said after the Lakers game, he challenged them to clean it up, be more safe with the ball, more careful with the ball, to take better care of the ball. They did not heed his call. They another letdown game against the Clippers. So, all of a sudden the lows are very low. Now all of a sudden everybody's panicking. Everybody's saying that, they need to make changes. People are talking about the starting lineup, all these things. And then comes the first quarter against Utah. It's like, surely they'll bounce back against Utah. And then that first quarter comes against Utah and they fall behind by 18 at some point in that game. And it's like, now your lows are very low. Now people are panicking. Now people are, ringing those alarm bells. And then the second half is about as well as they played offensively, the whole year. So I think it's kind of been an encapsulation that when they're on, they're really on, but there's too many stretches where they're off. And we've seen that sort of in this whole break. Even in the road trip, I mean, and even within games, even within that Utah game, we saw them at their worst and we saw them at their best. And the key for them is to be playing much closer to that best as the postseason, comes after starting today. It's one of their easier schedules, easier slate of games on their schedule. They got, as we said, the no Pacers game is a gimme, but the team at the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings against the Pacers. The Warriors are really the only tough team in this homestand, but the Warriors are going to be without Steph Curry. They have games against the Wizards, the Pelicans. So this is a good stretch where they can get much closer to playing, the high end of that spectrum rather than the low end of that spectrum.
Yeah, definitely frustrating as you cover the team every day, as do we. It's frustrating to watch and then, having to hear from the fans. But we saw this last year, and I hate to lean on they did this last year and they made it far, because even during the playoffs last year, whether you think about the Detroit series and, do you want to say they got fortunate with the Boston series? Hard to say, because they were down 20 points in games 1 and game 2. So on one hand, you can give them credit for coming back, but on the other hand, it's like, damn, like, who are these? Even in the playoffs, they kind of show that Jekyll and Hyde. And so the hope is that, reluctantly, yeah, they are coasting, but they've got to be able to flip it on, because, hey, Jimmy D wants that finals. He's finals or bust. So I'm not so sure what's going to happen if they don't make that goal, but the sense of urgency has to increase right now. And yeah, good.
And with that sense of urgency that you just said, people are talking about, can they, the Pistons have been sliding a little bit. Maybe, could they theoretically pass the Pistons? Probably not. The Celtics have a really tough schedule coming up. Theoretically, could the Celtics, I think they have like the third hardest strength of schedule coming up. Theoretically, could they pass the Celtics? Probably not. The urgency comes, I think, staying out of the 4 seed, and staying above the Cavaliers, because, look, I know everybody will say, like you said, last year they lost to the Pistons, a couple times in the regular season, then beat them in the playoffs. But staying out of the 4 seeds and avoiding the Pistons in that second round, because I get it. Last year they flipped on that switch, but those 3 Pistons matchups this year, they look like a mismatch. Then you might counter that with saying, well, you don't want to play the Celtics. That Pistons matchup looks like, at least this year, it's looked like a mismatch to me. They don't. It doesn't seem like they have someone who can slow down Cade Cunningham. OG has gotten that responsibility, that assignment, most of their matchups, and there's been some good, but overall, a lot of not so good. And you can't stop Cade Cunningham. You can't really stop the Pistons. So, that to me really seems like a mismatch. I know last year they flipped the switch, but I think staying out of that 4 seed is where the urgency should, come from.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not so sure they can't catch Boston. They played a hell of a game last night against OKC.
Yeah.
I don't know if you caught that game. That was a great game last night. No Tatum, no White, and it basically went down to the wire. You had the battle of the MVP candidates, SGA going for 37, Jalen Brown going for 34. Excellent game, and Boston is very impressive, man. You got to give them credit. All year they've been playing very well, and then you essentially get a talent upgrade with Jason Tatum coming back. But, I mean, 1.5 games out, and they still have that final April 9th game. That's the game that I'm circling, where if the Knicks can just keep the distance and cut it to within one, within this lighter schedule, if Boston slips a little bit, April 9th could really decide that 2 seed. And then, look, as far as the Pistons, first off, if the Knicks have to first, go through Orlando and then, or like one of those tougher physical teams, and then got to go see the Pistons, it'll be a little bit tougher. But I don't know, man. To me, you just got to play who's in front of you, and whoever's got to get beat has to get beat with the ultimate goal in mind.
Yeah, and even beyond just the seeding, there is urgency to kind of figure out their identity. I still think they're a team that's searching a little bit for their identity. I think Mike Brown a couple weeks ago was the most pointed I think we've seen him when he said, number 1 is Brunson in terms of the offense. Number 1 is Brunson, number 2 is Cat, and then number 3 is everybody else. And since the All-Star break, I think we've seen a better representation of that. Cat's been playing his best basketball of the year since, around the All-Star break.
Yeah.
He's been more efficient. He's actually taking less threes. He's starting, he's focusing more in the paint and then kind of letting the threes come to him. But this is a supporting cast, I think, that identity often goes missing. I mean, for a week now, this whole road trip, Mikal Bridges, hasn't really surpassed double-digit points. Finding their identity with him, finding their identity with OG, who's been playing well recently, but there's been times this year where he kind of just, slides off to the periphery. So there's, what are they doing with the bench? Jose Alvarado, right when they got him, looked like he was a great spark plug, a great addition, a great, backup guard. Now he's missed his last 11 threes, and, he's playing less. So, beyond the seeding, I think there's urgency to, kind of figure out just who their identity is and, figure out where they're at their best. And also just that, I think Brunson is Brunson. He'll figure it out, but he has been not playing his best of late. He's and classic Brunson, when he's not playing great in one area, he'll figure out other ways to, contribute. Now he's become a little bit more of a distributor. Maybe that has helped Cat get going. But we've seen their best at times, and then it seems like right when they play their best, then there's a little bit of a sag or, a drop off. So beyond the seeding, there is urgency to kind of just figure out, where are we at our best with, who playing what minutes. And I do think that's also a little bit part of the change with Mike Brown, right? Part of this whole Mike Brown change was he's going to experiment in the regular season. He's going to play different guys. He's going to, he's going to try different rotations. He's going to give bench guys different minutes. So there has been a little experimentation where we probably wouldn't have seen that under Tom Thibodeau. So, maybe that is a silver lining. But yeah, I think finding that identity is where the urgency is.
And sometimes he did speak on the hierarchy of being Brunson in town, but sometimes it's not. But I'm glad that Towns is trending in the right direction. But to me, they're going to need more. They're going to need more output from him to really have a chance at this. I understand. Look, when they're going to OG and he's on, he shoots the ball well. And in the Denver game, the one thing that stuck out to me was no turnovers. But then he comes to Clipper game, and he can barely put the ball on the floor before he loses it. So to me, I don't think I can trust OG against the more elite defenses to put the ball on the floor. This is why it's got to be 1-2 Brunson, Carl, and then them using their gravity, using the attention that the defense is going to throw at them to make everybody else better. But I've got it. What I was encouraged by was that we saw more cohesiveness between those two guys over the course of this trip, which to me is going to be really at the top here. But also, like, I haven't heard you guys really like ask Brown about that. Like, we need more two-man game between these two guys, especially as they get into the playoffs.
Well, that two man game is so important, right? Because with OG and Mikal, as you said, sometimes they can be more aggressive and put the ball on the floor, but their main roles in Mike Brown's offense are to run to the corners and get ready for sprays. He calls it. It's really just a kick out three.
Yeah.
Get ready for those kick out threes. So their roles are pretty defined in terms of just waiting in the corners, waiting for 3-pointers. Brunson and Cat, that two-man game is really like where the ceiling and the floor of this offense comes in. If that two-man game is clicking, if they're, keeping defenses off balance, if they can find mismatches for Brunson, they can find mismatches for Cat, if they can find open 3-pointers for Cat where he's not forcing it, that's really where, what raises the ceiling of this offense. Because, yes, Bridges and OG can, at times take over, and at times we kind of see them take guys off the dribble, especially OG, but for the most part, they're sprinting to the corners and waiting for those kick out threes. What really makes this offense click is Brunson and Cat and their chemistry and their ability to execute it in the two-man and in the pick and rolls and the pick and pop, in terms of creating mismatches, getting switches on defense, or forcing, when other teams double team Brunson, taking advantage of that. So, those are the two guys that raise the ceiling of this offense and really kind of determine how it's going to go, because, the rest of the guys kind of play off of them. So, if they're clicking, if they're executing, we see games like Denver or the second half against Utah where everything's going well. But, if they struggle, often it has, the domino effect where the rest of the offense struggles.
Yeah. Give me some empty side pick and roll, Brunson and Towns. And people are like, well, they can't do two-man because they switch all the time. Well, guess what? If they switch, give it to Karl Anthony Towns and give me a mid-range stop and pop. He's the best shooter on the team. Give it to him down low. Let him make a move. If he can't take the athletic wing off the dribble, shoot it right over him and get an efficient shot there. Like, I've got to see it a little bit more. I was encouraged over the trip, but I've got to see it a little bit more. Now,
or if he has an athletic wing, like a lot of teams like to put, smaller wings on him because they like to have their center obviously on Josh Hart and kind of let him play as a help defender. If there is a smaller, wing on Cat, let him start in the paint. Why does he always have to start around, outside the perimeter? Let him start in the paint and then give it to him when he's posting up. I think there's been a few times that we've noticed is he starts in the paint and he's calling for it and guys just don't feed him. Let him start in the paint. Let him use his size and his muscle to beat guys in the post. And then, make those double team comes and that opens up everything. He doesn't always have to be driving from the perimeter.
Right.
He can start in the paint and play in the post a little bit, and then let the threes come off there. Let his mid-range come off of that. I think that's something that they can explore more. I think it is something that since around the All-Star break, he's been doing more, and he's been taking more shots in the paint. He's shooting at a higher efficiency in the paint, and he's taking less threes. So I think that has been something that has helped him since the All-Star break.
Has this hierarchy talk, has that thrown off Mikal Bridges? I mean, Knicks fans are ready to trade this guy today if they could. I'm staying patient with him, but, the goose egg against the Lakers, 6 points against the Clippers, has been a lackluster West Coast trip for him. People are wondering, is the streak holding him down? Is it weighing him down? He's not closing games. He hasn't closed like the last 3 games, which to me is an indictment on him because you can't sign this big contract and they can't rely on you. Got vet minimum guys closing over you. That's a bad look for Mikal Bridges, man.
Well, that is something that really stands out. It's kind of ironic. Last year, if you remember, Bridges kind of said he was the one pushing for more minutes for Landry Shamet. They're very close friends, and now Landry Shamet's the one taking minutes away from him. And it's not a one-time thing. It's not a two-time thing. It's a very much recurring thing where it's Landry Shamet on the floor in the fourth quarter and not Mikal Bridges. And it's a tricky one because we saw last year that Bridges could struggle for 3 quarters. I can't tell you the amount of times in the playoffs last year where I had, I was getting ready to write a story during the game of, Mikal Bridges struggling, and then he makes the biggest defensive play of the game in the fourth quarter, or then he hits 2 key 3-pointers that key a comeback in the Detroit series, or does both.
Yeah.
So he's such a tricky one because he can be so maddening in terms of like, where is he? You can go minutes at a time and he's on the floor and you don't say his name, you don't mention him. And I don't think it's just a simple thing of like he's always got to be more aggressive because that's not, like he has said multiple times that that's not really his role. If you remember a couple weeks ago, where he kind of said, I looked myself in the mirror and I realized,
Yeah.
you can't be selfish. I got to accept my role. And then recently, he spoke in LA, I believe, and he said it's not a confidence thing. He just said, there's a lot of scores in this offense. Sometimes you get your looks, sometimes you don't get your looks. So, I don't think it's just a thing of like he's got to be more aggressive when he gets the ball. He's just got to take guys off the dribble, and because that's not really his game.
Mm.
He's not a guy who slashes to the rim. He'd rather take a mid-range fadeaway than
Yeah.
go for a contested layup. So I don't think him doing stuff that's not his game is the answer. Um, but I'm not sure what the answer is. Maybe it's on his teammates to get him more involved. Um, you know, maybe it's a sign of when the offense is better, they're forcing the defense to collapse, and then he gets more of those kick out threes. But one thing is clear is that there can't be games like the Lakers where he, scores 0 points and takes like 5 or 6 shots. It's not like he went out there and went 0 for 12 or 0
Yeah.
for 13. He was like 0 for 5, 0 for 6, maybe 0 for 7. And that just can't happen. There can't be, large stretches where a player as important as Mikal Bridges is such a, footnote basically. And, on the defensive end, he's been, up and down too. He's had his moments. I think and it's been pretty clear by now that he's not their best, point of attack defender.
Hmm.
That's better with, Shamet is certainly better in that aspect. When Deuce is healthy, Deuce is better in that aspect. OG is sometimes better in that aspect, depending on, the prototype of the player that is, handling the ball for the other team. But it is something that is, very concerning. And, last year obviously has a little bit of a blueprint for Mikal Bridges where he goes long stretches and doesn't impact the game. Then, all of a sudden he can make a big impact. But it's very confusing because, he keeps saying that, his role is what his role is. He's fine with that role. Sometimes you get your looks, sometimes you don't get your looks. But it just feels like there should be more of an emphasis in getting him those looks and, getting him involved. And especially early, because, getting involved early can have a big impact. A lot of times when guys don't score in the first quarter, don't get a lot of shots in the first quarter, it kind of, leaks into the other quarters. When you score 6 points in the first quarter, now you're feeling good. Now you're hot. Now you have a rhythm. Now you can impact the game. But right now, something that's not going away is Bridges not playing in the fourth quarter, and we'll see if that is something that stays true in the playoffs. But yeah, it's everybody talks about the starting lineup. Like, how about the finishing lineup? And the finishing lineup often does not include Mikal Bridges in it.
Yeah. And once again, we're talking to Jared Schwartz, covers the New York Knicks for the New York Post. Salute to everybody in the chat. Once again, hit the like button, hit the share button, and subscribe to the channel. We got a $20 super chat from my guy, Jason Woke. Shout out to my guy, Woke Producer, in the chat. Franchise channel member says, great opportunity tonight for the bench to get some burn. We should monitor minutes of our top guns and not rely on a buzzer beater from Brunson again. Thank you for joining us again, Jared. Right, so as we open up the show, breaking news from Jared, Karl-Anthony Towns, Josh Hart, and Jeremy Sohan all downgraded from questionable to doubtful in this game. So we most likely won't be seeing those guys, and then we'll see where they go from there in terms of who plays and how they manage some of the minutes. But one interesting thing I would say in relation to Mikal Bridges and the reserves. Based on the ineffective play as of late from an Alvarado, I do wonder if they put the ball in Bridges' hands to play make and initiate the offense when he's running out there with Towns. Because one of the things I fear, especially with that second unit, whether it's Alvarado, Deuce coming back, not Kolek, but the lack of playmaking to get Towns going with that unit, because that's really his time also to shine.
Well, that's, coming into the year, I think that was an idea a lot of people had. Mike Brown's one of his biggest ideas was have Jalen Brunson play off the ball more. Let's have Josh Hart bring up the ball. Let's have Mikal Bridges bring up the ball. Brunson doesn't have to bring up the ball every time and expend that energy. This way he can come off screens. He can get more catch and shoot looks. He can get more open looks. It doesn't always have to be Brunson bringing up the ball, getting a screen, beating his man. He can be a shooter. He can come off screens. He can be a cutter. And that was a big idea, and it hasn't always really come to fruition, I think, because, like you said, this team doesn't really have that many playmakers. And I think there was this idea that Mikal Bridges could do that. He's quick, he should be a good ball handler, but it's just not really his game. How many times do you see Mikal Bridges break his guy down, off the dribble, force the defense to collapse, and then distribute? Not often.
Yeah.
he's good in transition, when he's one of the more fit players in the league. He's fast, so he's good in transition. But he's just not really like a creator, off the dribble. So, that didn't really work. Really, the only non-Brunson playmaker is really Josh Hart. And I think that's why when people clamor for him to be taken out of the starting lineup, like you put a Landry Shamet in over Josh Hart, or you put a Mitch Robinson in over Josh Hart, you're losing a key playmaker. Um, someone who is a good ball handler, someone who can, drive into the lane and force the defense to collapse and kick it out to shooters. Someone who is good at coming off screens, so maybe not, not coming off screen, but good at setting screens, sorry. Someone who's just a playmaker, someone who has a decent amount of assists, plain and simple. And that's not something that is very common on this team. OG is not really a playmaker. Mikal's not really a playmaker. Deuce can do it, but it's probably not his biggest strength.
Can't do it.
Alvarado, not really a playmaker. Diawara, he's done a lot of things very well this year. He's not a playmaker for other guys. Shamet, great shooter, great on point of attack defender, not really a playmaker. So that's why that plan has not really come to fruition in terms of having Jalen Brunson play off the ball. Maybe that's why they at times struggle to get, Cad and Bridges and OG involved, because if it's not Brunson, and it's not Hart, nobody else is really getting them involved. And you mentioned Alvarado's struggles and the minutes. I think Brunson has the last couple of games has definitely had to play more minutes than maybe they would like, because Alvarado has struggled. Brunson needs more minutes, and he threw Kolek on a little bit on against the Clippers, but that doesn't seem like something they really trust at this point. So yeah, Brunson right now is definitely playing more minutes than the Knicks would like because of some of those Alvarado struggles. So yeah, the whole thing with the playmaker, I think that's been a big theme this year, is that, if it's not Josh, if it's not Brunson, there's really nobody else on this roster that is a natural playmaker. And I think that's where Josh Hart is. He does so many things. If he's not shooting the ball well, people like to, the debate always comes up about the starting lineup, but one of the main things he does well is play make, and it's so important because it takes pressure off Brunson. Um, that's what gets other guys involved, and it gets them going. It's something that just helps them click.
And that's why, everything you said about Hart is why I continue to think he should stay in the lineup. It's why I believe two coaches now have kept him in the starting lineup. Now, fans want to debate with me. It's politics, it's a Nova thing, it's nepotism, all of that. I'm not really buying that, man, to be completely honest with you. Yes, you can throw all the data out there. I know the starting five has not been on the positive side from a net rating standpoint. We know that confidence is key with him in terms of taking the three-point shot and making it. Yes, the truth is his three-point percentage is kind of dipped. November 42, December 40, January 42, but then he's at 37 February and 22 so far in March. But to me, with Josh Hart, what he gives that nobody else on this roster can give is the intangibles. As you said, a capable playmaker to take some pressure off of Brunson, especially if they can turn defense into offense. His transition game, he can put pressure on the rim. Another thing that they can't do consistently, right? The rebounding, the offensive rebound. How many offensive rebounds did he have in that Clipper game despite not shooting the ball all that well? Shamet's not doing that. Shamet's job is to shoot the ball, period. Mo's job is to play some defense and shoot the three. He does not have an in-between game. So I'm not ready to crown him the next Scottie Pippen like some Knicks fans are ready to do. Mo's development is going to come. But to me, this is why Hart is very important. Now, if they match up with Cleveland in the first round, all bets are off. I'm going with the Block Nest monster, Mitchell Robinson. He puts Jared Allen in a crib every time he sees him. I'm going with Mitch, Big Country. That's the only change I'm making to the starting lineup. You can always do a quick sub. His minutes have gone down this year. You can always do a quick sub, and he doesn't have to close, but I do like him as a capable playmaker alongside Brunson in that lineup.
And that politics thing, I'm not buying that it's politics. That's why he has to be a starter. Tom Thibodeau obviously preferred Josh Hart in the starting lineup, and he liked him on the court a lot. He led the league in minutes per game last year. Mike Brown coming into the year, one of his more notable ideas or changes that he wanted to make was to take Josh Hart out of the starting lineup, to put Mitch in, and to kind of have Josh play less minutes. And he thought maybe Josh having less minutes would make him allow him to make a bigger impact. It took 15 games for him to go back on that. 15 games later, I remember Mike Brown was sitting there and Josh Hart was back in the starting lineup and Mitch was back on the bench. And he kind of said like, yeah, I might have misread that. He
Yeah.
said Josh was kind of hurt during the preseason, so I didn't get a good feel for him. Now I do. He credited Josh for, being a good sport about it and not whining about it. But he kind of said like, yeah, I probably misread that. Learning Josh, seeing him play up close, seeing, 15 games of him, he's better when he's starting and he's better when he's, playing a lot of minutes. Now, granted, he is playing like 6, 7 minutes less than he did last year. So there has been a change, in that. He is on, not on the floor less. And you mentioned it also that shooting is obviously a big part of this, right? Because most opponents consider him the worst shooter in that starting five. That's
Yeah.
why they put the centers on him. They allow the centers to sag off into the paint and kind of be a rim protector and help on other guys. For the first half of the year, Josh was making them pay for that. He was shooting like around 40%, so he was making them pay for that. Since the break, it's obviously gone the other direction. He's in the 20s. If he's in the 20s, that's a problem because you know, teams can just sag off him and help on other guys, particularly Jalen Brunson. I think that's why we've seen more doubles on Jalen Brunson recently, because there's Josh Hart hasn't been able to make them pay. So that the question is, he's probably not going to be where he was in the first half because that was way above where his career average is. He's probably not going to be where he is now, because he's too good of a player to be shooting in the 20s. Is he going to be somewhere in the middle? Is he going to be closer to the first half? Is he going to
Average.
be closer to where he is now? If he can be somewhere in the middle, that's probably good enough. Um, he even when he's not shooting the ball well and they do sag off of him, he does a decent job. Like he uses that space to go set screen for other guys. I remember in the Thunder game actually,
Hmm.
uh, like he gave the ball to Bridges, got it back, then gave it back to Bridges for a dribble handoff, um, set a screen and opened up a 3-pointer for Mikal Bridges. So he does find ways, even if he's not shooting well and the other team is sagging off him, to kind of use that space and do other things. Maybe he drives into the lane and then dishes. But yeah, that shooting will be an important question because right now it is a problem if he's shooting in the 20s. It needs to be more towards the average of those two numbers. But yeah, like you said, I think it is telling that two different head coaches prefer him in the starting lineup, especially one that wanted to go into the year with him on the bench, quickly realized, he prefers him in the starting lineup.
Yeah, and it's to me, it's the key for him is going to be if he's not going to take that shot with confidence, quick decision. So if you don't want to take the shot, what I'd like to see is more of that two-man secondary action with him and Mikal Bridges, because if the center is going to be sagging off, to me that's perfect opportunity to get Mikal Bridges downhill in a dribble handoff and get him a nice stop and pop mid-range shot. That's what he loves to do. He's not going to attack the basket. Get him a nice stop and pop mid-range shot, force the center to make a decision, and then maybe, Hart's rolling or somebody else is rolling or cutting, and you can find them when you move the center away from the basket. But to me, they should be punishing teams with those two guys in some actions where you can get Mikal into his strength, got Josh into his strengths as a good passer, facilitator out of those dribble handoffs, and maybe that allows him to stay on the court and be more impactful, especially in the half court. Full court,
Yeah.
I like it in transition, but at half court, those are some of the things that he's going to have to do to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah, and this comes back to his playmaking ability, is that he is someone, even if he's not shooting well, is capable of being a playmaker. He's good at those dribble handoffs. He just has like the most energy. So he's the one he's getting a pass, he's giving it up, he's sprinting to set a screen, he's getting the ball back, he's going for a dribble handoff. So he's active, and obviously that some of that space, if the other center is sagging off of him, that just gives him a runway to go get offensive rebounds. Instead of someone in his face, if the center is 10 feet off him waiting in the paint, that just gives Josh Hart a running start to go get an offensive rebound. And like you said, in transition, he's probably their best in terms of pushing them in transition, pushing the pace. How many times does he get a long rebound and immediately turn and put the ball down and he's often like the first guy down the court waiting for his teammates to get there. Or there's sometimes where it's like, I don't know if there's that much there, like maybe pull the ball back, but he doesn't. He goes hard to the rim and either gets a layup or he's able to, pass to someone in transition. So, yeah, I still think his positives way outweigh his negatives in terms of, being in the starting lineup.
CP the franchise. We're talking to Jared Schwartz, who covers the New York the New York Knicks for the New York Post. Happy Friday to Knicks Nation. The Knicks are in Indy for the last game of their road trip, and then they'll be back at Madison Square Garden on Sunday taking on the Stephen Curry-less Golden State Warriors. But nevertheless, you know that will be an action-packed game at Madison Square Garden. And if you're still looking for tickets, use our code KFTV10 at SeatGeek and get 10% off your order. You can download the SeatGeek app or go to SeatGeek.com. Just search for Knicks versus Warriors, and it's very simple. You're going to look for the green dots. Those will typically be the best deals. They rank them from amazing all the way down to good. The red dots, typically want to stay away from those. That means it's way too pricey for where the seat is, and unless you're desperate, I would stay away from those. Always look for the green dots, amazing to good deals, and you're good to go. You click on the seat that you want, you put in your information, your credit card information, and then you just put in the promo code KFTV10, and you get 10% off. It's that easy. So shout out to SeatGeek, the number one rated ticketing app and the official ticketing app of KnicksFanTV. Okay, Jared. So on Wednesday in Utah, how apropos, the hero comes home and buries his team. You know, Jordan Clarkson said, "Man, I've been losing so much with Utah. I can't come back here for another L. I got to turn up." You know, so much so he had 5 offensive rebounds to go along with the 27 points. Is Jordan Clarkson, because now the Knicks fan, they are recency bias, man. They are victims of the moment, prisoners of the moment. He's got to be back in the rotation. He should have never left. What do you think they do going forward? He should play tonight, but what do you think they do going forward?
I did like he had a good line. He said, "I played here for a long time. I'm familiar with the rims," or something like that. That was a good line. The one thing, we've talked about Jose Alvarado and his struggles. The one thing that has actually opened up recently is some of these guys that had been buried in the rotation are getting some looks that they hadn't had in weeks. Tyler Kolek against the Clippers, Jordan Clarkson last night. So, one silver lining out of this Jose Alvarado maybe slide has been a little bit of a reminder that these guys aren't just, empty bodies on the bench. They're guys that at times this year had real, spots in this rotation and could be helpful down the line. Look, I don't think, when everybody's healthy, Clarkson needs a spot in the rotation. I don't think he needs, 15, 12 minutes a game. But look, it was certainly a reminder that, if your offense isn't clicking, you need a little spark. You got this guy who's a microwave scorer, a former 6th man of the year, a guy who's, if there's one thing he's been known for in his career, it's his ability to get shots up, his ability to get quick buckets. So, I don't think it's going to be something that immediately puts him right back in the rotation. But it's a nice little reminder, right? Because we hadn't seen him in a long time. It wasn't like a couple weeks. It was like months that we really last saw him, in action like that. And it was a nice little reminder, like, oh, don't forget about me. Like, you get it to some point maybe in the playoffs where you're down by 15, your offense isn't playing well. You don't necessarily need a defensive spark like Alvarado. Throw him on and see what happens. And, I think it's also a testament to him. He's a veteran's veteran. He's a pro's pro. He's someone that maybe they don't necessarily look up to him, but he is someone that, maybe he's not necessarily a leader, but he is someone who's been around the league a lot and that, that's appreciated in the locker room, that he's wise, he's got a good experience. And, I remember when he was kind of falling out of the rotation, we talked to him and he said, like, look, I know I can still help an NBA team. Like, I'm not, happy about being benched. I can still do this. I can still be an impactful player. And that was a little reminder that, yes, he can be. And, maybe the next time he gets a workload, it doesn't go so well. But we know he has one skill set, and it's quick buckets, it's microwave scoring, it's the ability to get in the game and quickly impact it. So that was a nice little reminder of what he can do, and nice little reminder that Mike Brown has this weapon on his bench, break glass in case of emergency if he needs, to bring him in.
Yeah, for sure. But what I'm going to be very interesting to see is, as it relates to the playoff rotation, how Brown handles the minutes for some of these guards. First off, hopefully Deuce can come back. He's trending in the right direction. Hopefully he can come back and regain form. I mean, he left on a very hot streak, especially from 3. So the hope is that he can come back. But, when I look at the starting 5 being as is, Big Country, Mitchell Robinson, Shamet, that 7 is locked in. But then you have to think Deuce gets back in there once he regains form. Depending on who they play, I think Diawara has to be situational to give them some size and defense and some energy at the wing spot, maybe some 3-point shooting. But then from Alvarado, you could make a case for Alvarado at times. You could make a case for Kolek or even Clarkson. But each of these guys has a strength, and they also have big weaknesses where it's not going to be clear who you can trust on a night-to-night basis.
Yeah, I think if you could combine those three guys you just mentioned, you'd have a hell of a player.
You'd have a hell of a player.
If you had Kolek's, passing and distributing ability, you had Alvarado's, on-ball defense and fierceness and toughness. You had Clarkson's scoring and shooting. You'd have a hell of a player. But it is nice that they kind of have complementary skill sets. Depending on the game, depending on the game state, depending on the opponent, depending on what you need, you have these little options. And like you said, I think the biggest question will be, assuming you get Deuce back, right? What is Mo Diawara's role, in the postseason? Is he just playing himself into a place where it's like, well, we got to find 12 minutes for him? Or, well, when everybody's healthy, when McBride, pushes him down a little bit, now you have McBride, Shamit, and Alvarado, and Mitch, obviously. Um, you know, Coaches don't usually play nine-man rotations in the playoffs. Now, the Pacers did last year and made the finals. But Mike Brown, for most of the year, even though like one of his reputations was, playing more of the bench, less minutes for the starters, he's kind of said a lot that he can play like eight and a half, nine players. And that ninth player is sort of borderline. So, you know, does Mo Diawara, if Miles McBride is back, does that mean there's less need for Jose Alvarado? And does that mean that maybe Diawara takes some of, Alvarado's minutes?
Yeah.
That's a good question to follow, assuming that Deuce is back. And question also is, does Deuce get back for the last week of the regular season? Does he get back just right before the playoffs and his conditioning maybe is not, where it was in the year? Is he rusty? That sports hernia is a tough, surgery where I don't think you can run for at least 6 weeks. So, when do they get Deuce back and how much can he contribute? Because, if he practices like once or twice before the playoffs, he's not going to be at, 100%. So yeah, they have a lot of ways to go with the bench. I think it is a stronger bench than last year. I like that there's complementary pieces, complementary skill sets, and that Brown can kind of pick and choose what he needs depending on the game state.
Knicks taking on the Pacers tonight. Last game of the road trip. What's been since covering the team, what's been your favorite city to travel to so far this year?
Well, it may be a little basic, but I was in Vegas for the
NBA Cup.
For the NBA Cup. So no, I'm not a big gambler. I'm not a big bettor. I don't even know how to play blackjack or poker. But Vegas was cool because of the weather, just being in that city, the history to it, or by the end of the trip, though, I was a little ready to go back. The one thing that got to me was like you got to walk through a casino pretty much everywhere you go. If you want to get a cup of coffee, you're walking through a casino basically.
Yeah.
So probably Vegas. I do like Indianapolis, because it's good to walk places. Minneapolis was cool because they have a skyway system where you don't have to go outside.
Yeah.
A lot of Philly is obviously always cool city. Although I'm not an Eagles fan, obviously. But yeah, a lot of good cities.
Favorite player to cover so far?
I mean, it's a basic answer, but it's got to be Josh Hart. I mean, he has such a personality. You can go to him about everything. He's always insightful. He's always, he's very rarely cliche, which I like. He's always trying to answer something genuinely instead of just giving a cliche. So I know it's a lot of people's answers, but I gotta go with him just because he's he's great with the media and I think he says things that other guys might not. He's insightful. He'll tell you the truth. He'll tell you how he's feeling. What he thinks about things, and he tries to genuinely answer stuff instead of just kind of covering things up with cliches.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. He seems to be the one that doesn't have doesn't give you the buttoned up media training answers, the canned answers. Like how your phone, the AI gives you the canned responses and in your emails and stuff, like the OG responses. Hart actually gives you some candid responses and he says how he feels. So yeah, I would agree with that one for sure. For sure.
Yeah, Jeremy Sohan has actually been, an interesting personality. He's a big soccer fan. I'm a big soccer fan, so that's been fun. Jose Alvarado, since he arrived, he's he's a good personality. He's fierce. He's feisty. He's obviously from New York City. So he's been fun. Some maybe less Harold. Mo is very down to earth.
Mm.
Mo's a good. Um, he's very confident, but he comes across very humble. I think that's a very good combination. Mike Brown has said he's like the most confident young man that I've ever been around,
Mm.
which is not one of the most confident, the most confident.
Yeah.
But he comes across very humble, so that's a good combination as well.
Definitely shows. Who's your non-USA World Cup team? Who's your World Cup team?
Um, my mom was born and spent the first couple years of her life in Germany, so maybe I'll
Okay.
go with Germany.
Okay. All right. There we go, man. I'm looking forward to it. The city's gonna be on fire. Whole tri-state's gonna be going crazy. But yeah, man. Hopefully, when the playoffs start, we'll get you back on. But this was your intro to Knicks Fan TV. Hope you had a good time, man.
Absolutely, a good intro, and hope to do it again to sometime soon.
Sounds good. Any articles, anything on the burner? Game recap? What should we be looking out for?
We'll see. We'll see how today's goes. There's a couple of things that I want to try to get. One thing I'll be interested in asking after the game and looking ahead a little bit to that Warriors game is, if you remember the last time they played the Warriors, Draymond Green obviously took down Cat with that flagrant
Yeah.
foul. Cat wasn't happy about it. One thing that I thought was interesting, and I know a lot of fans thought was interesting, was that there wasn't much backup. Like nobody went and got in Draymond's face. Guys were laughing and hugging, and smiling with him after the game. Mike Brown obviously hugged him. And there was not much sense of like, well, we can't let that happen to our teammate. You come for you come for him, you come for all of us.
Yeah.
Or, where obviously in other eras, Knicks teams would. Or,
Yeah. Alvarado hadn't been on the team yet. Had he
well,
been,
yeah,
it would have
so
been a different story.
so that's one thing I'm looking forward to asking is, this guy's going to try to get on your skin, and particularly he's going to try to get under Cat's skin.
That's
That's
right.
not that wasn't a one-time thing. He's talked about him on his podcasts. He's every time they play, Draymond obviously has a thing out for Cat. So knowing that, how do you go into the game and not let that throw you off your rhythm and not let that wreck the game? So that, and now that you have some bite with Alvarado, will it be different? And how do you approach that?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to their responses because that was a bad look optically. I don't think, Brown, I think he's done a good job so far, but he hasn't played the optics game well so far. Being a coach of the New York Knicks, you got to be a little bit more stern and have a poker face a little bit. I know him and Draymond, they won championships, they're friends, they're buddy, but still, you didn't have to be, loving up on the guy or all that. You're the coach of the New York Knicks, man. You got to know where you're at. We're from the school of Van Gundy. Our coach fights for his players, literally. So you got to have some more self-awareness than that, Mike Brown. You got to be a little bit more aware.
Yeah, I don't think he doesn't have to come out and say, Draymond Green is a villain or a criminal. But one thing that actually caught me a little off guard was after that game was not only did he not say anything about Draymond Green, he went out of his way to criticize Cat for getting in foul trouble in that game. He said, what Draymond did wasn't what bothered me. What bothered me was Cat picking up that fourth or fifth foul and getting in foul trouble, and now he can't be in the game. So not only did he not back up Cat, maybe he went out of his way to criticize Cat, and I thought that in the moment that was a weird answer.
Yeah, very much so. Well, we'll see what type of fight they have starting tonight. Last one of the road trip against a full stacked Pacer team. Probably no Karl-Anthony Towns, probably not Josh Hart, but we'll see, how Mo and Jordan Clarkson, those guys fare. Jared Schwartz, thanks for joining us again, man.
Thanks. Pleasure first time on the show.
Absolutely. All right, salute to everybody in the chat once again. Hit the like button, hit the share button, subscribe to the channel. Another excellent episode of Knicks Fan TV. We're not done yet. We're not done yet. We got an action-packed show. Shout out to my franchise channel members. I see the Rhyme Animal Chuck D in the chat as well. If you guys are on the lunchtime grind, throw a hashtag grind in the chat. Salute to the Facebook fam as well. Great job by Jared. First time on the show, man. Very well-spoken guy. Very sharp. Does his job. Covers the team for the New York Post. So great job by Jared, man. I enjoyed that conversation for sure. Yeah, Knicks taking on the Pacers tonight. And yeah, Pacers, they rested like half their team against the Suns last night. And so, of course, they're going to be ready for the Knicks. So we'll see. Not scared of nobody, but I just find that to be very interesting. Okay. I got a couple other things I want to get to, including the fan mailbag and all of that. And call me up on the KFTV Discord, man. If you guys want to chop it up, call me up on the KFTV Discord, and we will get it in. Okay. Let me just set up the next segment here. I got my Worst Take t-shirt on. Worst Take tees. You can get them at shop.KnicksFanTV.com. You can get them in the store. My guy Will Latimer in the chat. I see you, Will. I definitely see you there. All right, let me set it up. Great time of year, man. I love this time of year. You got the conference tournaments going on all day. St. John's back in action tonight. Right now, I'm watching Ohio State and Michigan. A little bit chillier here in New York, but still a beautiful day. And then you have, all the conference tournaments. You got Knicks coming on tonight. So, yeah, man, let's get it. 15 games left. I still think the 2 seed is gettable. Even though the Celtics look great, they really do look good. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not even going to lie to you. I think they look good. And they played a hell of a game last night against the Thunder. I was entertained with that game as a basketball observer. Hell of a battle last night. And they didn't have Tatum or White. And they took the Thunder down to the wire. Just took excellent execution. Thunder just executed. Shea got into his bag. I mean, when he gets to that free throw line extended, any one of those spots, that Shea spot, he just gets to it. It don't matter who's covering him. It's just like the muscle memory, the repetition. 2-3 dribble. It's kind of like MJ, man. 2-3 dribble, mid-range, stop and pop. Pure. Timeout Boston. And Boston still got a 3 off at the end. Peyton Pritchard took a heave, but the Thunder came out victorious. So, yeah, I still think it's gettable, man. I still think it's doable. And regardless, even if they keep 3, I'm fine with either one of those first-round matchups. They see the Raptors, they're going to sweep them. They see Orlando, it's going to be a physical test, but they still should be able to get past any of those teams. The Heat, same way. Yeah, SGA broke Wilt's record. Yes, he sure did. So hopefully we put a little bit more respect on his name. He's a fantastic player, very cerebral and super skilled. New York Yankee Thunder missed so many wide open threes. Ironically, Chet couldn't miss against the Knicks, but they were bricking against the Celtics. Yeah, Chet, that game also was won on the Chet 2 free throws by Chet Holmgren at the end. So, yeah, very interesting stuff. All right, so we're going to get to the fan mailbag. But first, this was very interesting. Could Jalen Brunson be potentially switching teams? This one made news all week, and so many people tagged me in this. This is from the Roommates episode where Jalen Brunson talks about potentially playing for a different team in the Olympics. So let's hear it and react to it. Here we go.
Feels more at home to you, playing for the national team on that stage or playing for your city with the Knicks?
Wow, tough situation.
I mean, y'all had Guadalajara bumping.
We had it bumping for sure. Playing for my city. I was raised there. I don't know. I guess that's what I'm gonna go with. Playing for my city is definitely a dream though. But doing what I did for the national team was dope too though. Like amazing. Never really thought I would do that, and I did. Yeah, I went to Olympics. You did, no?
Won the World Cup.
You got slept in the World Cup.
I played in the Olympics, yeah. They did it.
You're going to try to play 2048 in LA?
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Did y'all qualify yet?
No.
Are y'all going to?
Yes. Are you going to come to our game?
No. Why would I? You know I'm part German. I might try to get my German citizenship to play for the national team.
JB. You going to play for Germany?
If you want to.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You can't play for nowhere.
That'd be kind of lit.
I can play somewhere else.
You cannot.
You play Jamaica.
They're not going to let y'all.
Why won't they let me?
I'm telling you.
Deutschland.
Yes.
What you mean?
You don't have citizenship.
No.
Well, they'll get it for him, though, if you want to play.
What? Hell, they would do anything to get him to play in the jersey. You think that would be good if he played?
I think it'd be all right.
AT&T.
All right, so would Captain Clutch consider playing for Team Jamaica? Let's talk about it. Captain Clutch Jalen Brunson puts it out there. Would he play for the Jamaican national team? I think that would be fantastic as a fellow Jamaican myself. So all my yardies, throw a flag in the chat if you're in here with me. I like the sound of that. I like that. Look at that. Captain Clutch, the Thompson twins. Oh, yeah, we got the twins, too. All right? We got them. JB running the show. in the green, black, and gold. I love it. So you got Brunson, you got the Thompson twins, you got Scotty Barnes. You got a multi-versatile, very versatile Scotty Barnes. We got Norman Powell, the flamethrower. All right. Somebody asked me the other day, CP, who's going to be the big man? We got Beef Stew. Y'all forgot about Isaiah Stewart. Then we could get Nick Richards as a backup. All right. Don't forget about my guy, Devin Vassell, San Antonio Spurs. He's balling right now. We got Josh Minot. So we will be a very defensive, physical team in the Olympics. Then if I'm Jalen, I'm calling the two other point guards. I'm calling SGA first. Like, hey, listen, MVP, I know you're running the show with Team Canada. That's your squad. I get it. But we could truly make history right now in the green, black, and gold. If SGA says no, I'm calling Jamal Murray up. There was a little, tension, a little friction with him and Team Canada. Didn't play too well in the Olympics. If SGA bails on us, we call Jamal Murray up. Let's run the backcourt together. Thompson twins, Scotty, Beef Stew. I like that team. And then, here it is. Here it is right now. The bombshell reveal, like the NWO. The last person to join the team. AJ DeBonsa, the future number one pick. We bringing AJ in the green, black, and gold for the Olympics. We gonna go get AJ. The modern day Kevin Garnett, we gonna go get AJ as a surprise reveal. AJ's mom's from Jamaica. That's right. That's right. I put Patrick Ewing on the bench. Captain Patrick Ewing coaching the team. And we hitting it. That's the team we rolling with to Los Angeles. I love it. I definitely love it. Yeah. But overall, I like the way that the program is shaping up. The Thompson twins have committed. You got Scotty. Norman Powell has committed as well. I believe they will have to go through FIBA this year. They think they might have to participate to qualify, something like that. Have to look at the rules officially. But yeah, we building the squad up. And look, I don't know. The one thing, I don't think Jalen, he might not make the USA team. If Chef Curry's going to play again, if Halliburton is going to play again, if maybe they bring in Cade Cunningham this year, I'm not even sure Jalen makes the Team USA team. So Jamaica could, and should be an option. But that's a gritty team. Thompson twins, Scotty, Beef Stew. You ain't going nowhere. You ain't scoring on us, man. You ain't scoring on us. Yeah, the World Cup team was the Reggae Boys. You had the bobsled team. I don't remember. What was the bobsled team name? I don't know. Top Shotters. That's the Olympics team. Let's go. I like that. I like that. Daniel says Chef Curry's done. I don't. Where you get that? Chef? Did the chef say he was done with the Olympics? Nah, SGA ain't Haitian, man. SGA people's from the yard, bro. SGA ain't Haitian. No, sir. Did Steph say he's done with the Olympics? I didn't hear that. Is he done with the Olympics? I'll have to look it up. We'll ask him that when he comes here to New York. Steph, are you done with the Olympic team? CP in his glory. I like the fact that the program is coming together. I think that's a beautiful thing. And, you got real NBA talent in here. Yeah, grow the sport. Patrick Ewing's doing a great job over there. So I like that. We'll see what happens. See if they can make some noise. Yeah, I didn't hear that the chef was out today. I thought he was a possibility. Michigan and Ohio State going at it right now. Michigan up by 3. Big Ten tournament. Okay. let's get to, we'll have Knicks versus Pacers on tonight. Knicks versus Pacers on tonight. Great job by Jared Schwartz. Okay. All right, what else we got? Father P says, call him up, CP. All right, let's get to the next segment of today's show, and that is the fan mailbag. You guys have been submitting questions in the Ask CP section of the KFTV newsletter. And we've been asking you guys to sign up for the newsletter. It's free, and you get daily Knicks news. You get KFTV Remy's game recaps. You get our quarterly updates from KFTV Jeff. You get KFTV Omar with some incredible think pieces. The newsletter is really coming along very nicely, man. So make sure, go to KnicksFanTV.com, click on newsletter, and just drop your email in here right now. It's free. We don't send you any spam. We don't send you any junk. It's just pure Knicks content, pure KFTV content, and news from KFTV, like when we're doing our watch parties and things of that nature. A lot of people ask me, when's the next party? When's the next party? Join the mailing list so that you're up to speed directly to your email box. Very important that you guys do so. So we appreciate that. Okay, so we've collected a ton of questions, and I answered a few a couple weeks ago. And I will answer the next set here. I'm just seeing which ones I want to add in here. Okay, let's see. All right, let's go to my guy Fabian. Fave424. Shout out to Fabian. So we'll just drop it in here, do a little copy and paste for now. And we'll make sure that you guys can see it and put it in a little Google. Oh, that's a little too big. Okay. First one up here, Fabian Aramara. Shout out to my guy Fabian. He says, given the Knicks roster ceiling, reliance on defensive overextension, limited half-court creation, and dependence on health and shooting variance, is there any analytically credible path to contention without outsized luck? Or do recent development gains and roster continuity suggest the upside is higher than history would indicate? Well, I think, look, we've seen some very positive things from them defensively. I mean, they've been able to crack the top 10 in defensive rating. So if we're going to lean on the simplification from Mike Brown with the defense and the players going out there and executing when they're playing to the best of their ability, I think that really puts them in true contender status as long as the offense follows along. And we've seen that this Knicks offense, when it's at its peak, to me is the best, is as good as anybody in this league. But defensively, they really have to lock in here. And I think they can do that. And in terms of, developmental gains, roster continuity, you have a lot of promise in Mo Diawara. We'll see what Tyler Kolik's role will be going forward. You have a first-round pick this year in this year's draft, which many consider to be a talent-loaded draft. You will have the Wizards pick, which will be an early second-round pick as well. Based on where they are with the second apron, how many of those guys do they keep, we shall see. But you do have an opportunity to go get more rotation players, whether it's a playmaking point guard, a playmaking guard, another big man, another wing. Depends on who's out there. So I still think there's room to elevate their ceiling. I also think there's still room right now with the new coach and the new system to elevate their ceiling as well. So shout out to Fabian. What do you guys think in the chat? Shout out to Fabian. $10 super chat, AP. Oh, I had my sound effects turned down. Here we go, AP. $10 super chat. Says, going to my first Knick game ever next Sunday. Going to wear my black KFTV hat for my first game ever. 2017, probably will wear original Patrick Ewing jersey from 1995. Wow. Yeah, definitely rock that. Definitely rock that. First game, Ewing jersey, black KFTV snap. That's a great combination. Great combination. Shout out to AP and enjoy your first game. Okay, shout out to Fabian. All right. We'll get to another one here. Let's load them up. Knicks and Pacers tonight. Friday night Knicks. Sources has already added me on Twitter. Says do it just to get there. Shout out to Sources. He's ready. Shout out to Robert Randolph. Okay. Next question, April Lenny Brown at yahoo.com says, loved your interview with Deuce. Can we expect more interviews with other current Knicks? Listen, we always leave the light on for that possibility. We'd love to have some of these guys, but to me, I kind of prefer the older guard. Hey, to this week, we had two great ones. We had Rod Strickland, followed by Chris Childs. The older guard, they have more stories to tell because they finished their career. They're a bit more open. They're not, today's younger player, they like Jared said, outside of Hart, these guys don't really say much. Right? Like, I don't think, as much as I'm a fan of his, I don't think OG would be a good interview. Like Mikal, I don't think these guys would be great interviews. Like, they don't really have much to say. They're not really open. They open up to each other and talk to each other, but they're not really as open. My guy, Big Country. Big Country, he kind of comes on the show in an unorthodox way. He just comments on our Instagram. So he'll comment on our posts. He'll comment on our live streams. So that's how we talk to Big Country. That's how we communicate. But I'd love to do it like a profile in Big Country and like his trucks. Pull up at his crib, do a little profile, Big Country's crib. Maybe go down to Nashville where he's at in the off season. But yeah, the Deuce interview is great. We'll try to do more. Like I said, we're definitely open to it. But by and large, like a lot of these guys, they don't really have much interesting things to say. But hey, we'll leave the light on. Well, I like to bring in the legends. The once a Knick, always a Knick series. We were supposed to have Chris Copeland on today. He canceled. He had an emergency, so we'll reschedule with Copeland. But we have some other guys in the Rolodex who we're reaching out to bring on. But also, you can catch our series from the KFTV archives right now, available on all podcast platforms. Where we're the only Knick podcast, the only Knick platform that has this gold mine of content and stories from Knicks former players of the past. We have the most by far from anybody, even MSG. And we've chopped them up, the key stories, the fun stories, the emotional stories, and we've just produced like little 2 to 3 minute sound bites. So we started with the X-Man, and then we've moved on to, we started with John Starks rather, then we moved on to the X-Man, and now we're on Derek Harper. We just released our first Derek Harper from the KFTV archive story earlier this week, and we'll be dropping another one probably on Sunday, so look out for it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. Okay. All right. Next one up. We'll do 2 more, and then Boogie. Shout out to everybody who has been submitting their questions. Once again, join the KFTV newsletter at KnicksFanTV.com. Okay, next one up. Shout out to Oliver. Says, if the Knicks are an early exit in the playoffs, what would be your I told you so reason? I mean, to be honest, like if they see these guys like the Orlandos, Torontos, Miamis, even Philly, I don't think they're an early exit. Now, second round, is it a Detroit? If they lose to like a Detroit, the I told you so would be the lack of ball handling. Because that's what really dooms this team. When they see pressure defenses, that's when they cough the ball up a lot more. It's when you get them stuck in the half court and they can't play make for each other. And also not only lack of ball handling, their lack of getting rim pressures, which would ultimately help them get to the free throw line, which would ultimately help them get easier points when their shots aren't falling. Because they are a feast or famine shot-making team. So those would be the 2 reasons. If I had to say I told you so, it would be their lack of playmaking, ball handling, and their inability to put pressure on the rim, stop the clock, get guys a breather, get easy points. Because the transition game kind of slows down in the playoffs. It gets very slow, and it becomes a grind. So you're going to have to execute in the half court. Great question from Oliver. Okay. Let's see who else we got here. Let me just mark these off so that I know that I went to there. Okay. Here we go. KFTV Joseph. He's a new writer for the newsletter. Shout out to Joseph. Could check him out on the newsletter as well. Welcome to the team, officially Joseph, and he submitted a question. So here we go. What do you think the Knicks' future plans are with Tyler Kolek? I've loved him since college and knew he was going to be an elite point guard if given the opportunity. As it stands, Deuce and Brunson are still the number one and number two guards in terms of ball handlers. Given the acquisition of Alvarado, under the assumption we pick him up or option re-sign him, feels as if the room for Kolek is limited. Well, for Tyler, and also shout out to Big Bo 1804, who said the $5 super chat, says, am I the only one that notices how clean the offense run with Tyler and running the point guard instead of Alvarado? So I kind of tackle both of those in one. Look, I think Tyler was always going to be kind of that second or third string option at the point. I think he's come a long way this year. He's developed. He's improved. His playmaking, to me, he's the best playmaker on the team. He still has some work to do in terms of his shot selection, his shot aggressiveness, his size and physicality, which will come. He's only in year 2, so he will continue to get stronger, get bigger, get stronger. It took McConnell a little while to really settle into that role. And is it a lock that they bring back Alvarado or even Deuce? Now, Deuce has a little bit more time for them. There's a little bit more time to make a decision on Deuce. I'm not sure it's a lock for either one. So, but to me, until he continues to improve defensively, shot creation for himself and gets bigger, then I don't think they will have that trust. Because right now, the thing about Tyler is that they don't trust him. That's why they brought in Alvarado for this stretch running into the playoffs. That's why they brought in Jose as insurance. Because what you're seeing is clearly they don't. If they trusted Kolek would be getting the burn. So I wouldn't count him out. You have him under a rookie deal. There's no reason to rush him. But he just has to keep working. He just has to keep working. Well, yeah, shout out to you guys. Shout out to Joseph for submitting the question. So next Friday, we will continue with our Q&A series. And as I said, if you want to submit a question, just go to KnicksFanTV.com. If I go back here, this is the front of the site, KnicksFanTV.com. This is the front of the site. Obviously, you can go get your merch and all of that here. But at the top, you've got newsletter. Just click on newsletter right here. Boom. And then just drop your email right there. Free. And you get daily updates to your email box, quality information. We're not sending you Christmas cards. We're not sending you spam or chain letters or nothing like that. Quality Knicks content, KFTV updates on all of our events, so you don't miss, especially with the playoffs or playoff watch parties coming up. So you want to be the first to know, and that's that. But what do you guys think about Tyler and his future with the team? I still think his future is bright. It's just not, might not be right now. And that's okay. That is okay. All right, shout out to AP again. He says, $10 super chat. Bang! He says, been watching KFTV since 2017 from the beginning, and you and all the content creators have replaced radio for the mainstream for me. Hopefully we can lift that gold thing one day. Thank you for what you do. Well, we appreciate it. That's basically how and why we started the platform, was because I didn't feel like there was quality content as far as the Knicks were on the mainstream and on the radio. No offense to those guys. They have a living to make, but I thought it could have been a lot better. And in this new era of content consumption, people want it daily. We want daily Knicks talk. We want to get these shows, and we are the only podcast like the radio that takes phone calls, live phone calls from the fans. And it's a blessing to be able to take those phone calls from all around the world. So I love when Carlo calls in. I love when Ashwin calls in. I love when my guy Greg from Vietnam leaves us a comment. Greg used to call in when we used to have the phone lines, but he still leaves us comments in the comment section, letting us know he's still there. I love my guys from Japan call in. Obviously, my guys from New York. So it's a blessing, man. We are doing things that nobody else is doing. And your support on a daily basis is why we're able to do it. So I never look past that. We got a great thing going here, and we just continue to ask for your support. Like, share, subscribe. We appreciate the donations. It helps us scale, bring on more talent, and continue to bring you quality content. That's what we're looking for here, man. Building this thing brick by brick. We just need your support to keep it going and to continue to scale. Tap in on earlier content, man. Check out my interview with Rod Strickland, the first team to make it to the NCAA tournament, LIU Brooklyn. My conversation with Chris Childs, we had a good one as well. I'll be back on later today for the NBA report later on this evening after I eat some lunch. And then we'll be back for postgame, Knicks versus Pacers, late night, KFTV, CP, and Alex back on the 1s and 2s. All right, so appreciate the show today. Shout out to Jared Schwartz of the New York Post. Make sure you go follow him. And we'll see you guys later on, man. #1 show for the fans, by the fans. Peace.